Welcome to the Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show. We are live, looking forward to connecting and talking about prior week activity as well as looking ahead. But before we do that, Mario, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Mike, and you?
I'm doing excellent, man. It's Friday, and as always, it's good to connect and just bounce ideas off each other and try to make sense of this craziness out here. But before we move further, feel free, as always, to throw out thoughts, ideas, suggestions in the chat. We'll get to them when we are able to. And so let's kick it right off, man. I think this week a lot of things is unfolding. We have stuff here in the West. Jerome Powell getting grilled by politicians as if it's something he can really do about what's going on. And then out east, we got the summit and the announcement of some new additions to the monetary structure. And so we'll jump into that. But I want to before I do that, I want to just put up a little visual aid, get your thoughts on it. And so the focal point of everything will be surrounded around gold. But what comes to mind when you see this little visual aid, Mario?
BRICS nation and the challenge to the United States, to the Anglo-American financial empire. So you've got the Brazilian president, Bolsonaro, then you've got Putin behind the gold bars there, and you've got the South African president, Modi from India, and Xi Jinping from China. And they represent, I think, a quarter of world GDP and 40% of the population. And I think they're trying to lure other countries into the BRICS. It's not just going to be Brazil,
Right.
Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're going to keep probably the acronym, but there will be many more nations. And I think they will probably be more than half the population of the world, and maybe even up to half, almost up to half, I would say, GDP. They could add Indonesia, Thailand, countries like that, Pakistan. What else? There's Philippines could be one. Who knows?
Right, this is just. I think this is one of the most historical moments in modern history because we're witnessing the turning point for the global monetary structure, and the fact that the West is so distracted by so many other problems, and the media is throwing every wrench at us they can to keep us distracted and keep fear pumping through our bloodstreams, while all along out east they're making moves. And to add further to that BRICS development, I think, of course, the BRICS are the 5 leading nations that have been working towards this upcoming announcement whenever it comes. But then again, we have all those other smaller unions. And so Africa has like a little several country collaboration. And then we got the CSO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, with all the surrounding Asian countries. Then we got the Eurasia, the EAUS, East Euro-Asians, whatever, with all the surrounding Russian countries. So
Pakistan, and yeah.
Right. So you start off with the big boys, the 5 nations, and then you get the small ones around them, and you bring them all together at the end. It's going to be a hell of a party one day, and the West wasn't invited. And so it's like, okay, will it be a peaceful transition, or will there be some type of conflict? Because this stuff never rolls over in a friendly manner. But let's get into some nuts and bolts of what's going on, man. And so this is definitely worth talking about. We got all types of stories, so we'll get to it. But the summit taking place right now, and so far, I'll say earlier this week, Putin and the whole entity over there in Russia were talking about the SPFS, which is the alternative payment messaging system, and the BRICS can access it right now. It's up and running. It's good to go. And of course, on my side, I've been talking about the fact it's already been ready, just waiting on the right moment. And it seems that right now, heading into summer, is the right time to make all these announcements. And so here we have something coming from the Western media, which is not too surprising, but a challenge to the dollar. Now, gold, of course, is going to be anchored. We were trying to bounce ideas off each other earlier as to how this is going to play out. But so right now, how do you think the initial rollout will actually play out?
Yeah, I mean, that headline there says they're creating a new reserve currency. I personally don't think they're going to create like a single currency like the euro or the dollar. They will have a monetary trading system where gold will be an important part of underlying or supporting, being an anchor for that system. But I think they'll keep using their own national currencies for domestic use for individuals and businesses.
Yeah.
Um, whether I'm not sure, they've probably seen what happens in Europe with the euro. It's been kind of a disaster for Europe. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure they want to have um, a single currency.
Mhm.
But because they go on about a lot the multipolar world, right? So
Yeah.
if you're going to have a multipolar world, you want different currencies. A little bit like during the 19th and early 20th century, when every country really still had its own currency, but they were they were linked with gold. All of
Mhm.
them, they had a gold standard. Some
Yeah.
people think it could be currencies also a basket of commodities backing currencies. The only problem I see with that is that most commodities are consumed,
Mhm.
unlike gold. Gold has a stock to flow ratio of 84 years, and other commodities, they're consumed, so they're very volatile. So I don't think it would be a good thing to back currencies with commodities that are consumable.
Yeah. How about that basket, of course, being anchored around gold with a certain percentage, just because that is, I'm sure, a criteria for every one of those five nations to be able to sit down together and continue to work and move forward together, just to show that they're committed to this transition. But then on top of that, all five of those other nations are naturally rich in other types of rare earth metals and things of that nature, which will be very important for every nation has their own agenda. China has the one belt, one road. Russia has the whatever they're going to end up connecting to that, and then Africa as well, and Brazil, that Latin American trade situation. So everybody got something to bring to the table. They all need the I guess the infrastructure, the metals and things of that nature that come from that from those rare earth metals. So I think adding percentages of certain other types of things that the world needs in order to stay in there really certifies and establishes trust to
Yeah,
me. So,
I guess it could help. It could help. It's just that if they want other countries to join, there
mhm,
might be some other smaller countries that have no natural resources.
mhm.
Um,
And that's where your gold come in handy because
yeah,
every nation been repatriated and getting their weight
yeah,
up for the last several years. So if you just come to the table with 2%,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying, you can put
Because
you can talk.
you don't need gold, underground in to accumulate gold,
Mhm.
because it's money. You can accumulate gold via producing things, exporting things, and yeah. But if a country that doesn't have maybe too many natural resources, they would be at a disadvantage if the basket of commodities is too very important.
Mhm.
But who knows?
Yeah. And to move further, just with the announcement or him talking about exploring possibilities of creating a international reserve currency. So put all that together, international reserve currency, it's like, the first thought is a singular because it's
Mm,
not saying currencies, but it says based on a basket of BRICS currency. So it's
well,
like, okay, so those five nations will be the primary anchor that then the rest of the world would acknowledge as that reserve.
I guess so, because they're the most economically powerful.
Hmm.
So that makes sense. But it's better than just having one nation like the
Hmm.
U.S. controlling it. And I think these BRIC countries, they've learned that having just one nation controlling the
Hmm.
world reserve currency is not a good thing for that nation, because every other country in the world wants to earn dollars.
Yeah.
So, the U.S. has built so much uh, imbalances,
Yeah.
and it's made the U.S. I don't like to say the word, but lazy,
Hmm.
because you can just print the dollars and buy anything you want.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I think
Mm.
these guys are not stupid. They've done their
Right.
homework, and
Right.
they don't want to make the same mistake. I think it's called the Triffin paradox.
Hmm.
Reserve currencies eventually collapse because um, so much debt has to be created. But
Right.
when you have gold, it's neutral.
Right. Now, how about this BRICS currency basket scenario? It mimics what the West has already created with the UN and the use of the SDR from the IMF as a global basket that everybody right now recognizes, and that everyone contributes to it in according to their own percentages and portions or whatever. But then they do something similar to where the BRICS is the leading entity. They have that basket of 5 currencies as their, BRIC SDR version, and then from that, all other nations participate accordingly based upon however they the
Yeah,
weightage of their currency in that same basket. But then of course, all pegged to something stable in the form of gold. So
yeah. The
not,
SDR, the
yeah,
SDR is backed by nothing, and John Exter, he wrote in 1972 because the SDR was created in 69. It's just a basket of fiat currencies.
right. But on the counter to that though, but the BRICS they wouldn't do that exact same thing. They would
No, that's
then
what I'm saying. They would
right,
be a backed SDR, if you want to say it.
yeah,
But John Exer said that fiat currencies like the dollar are IOU nothings,
mm-hmm.
and SDRs are even worse because you don't even know who issues them. Like so he calls it "who owes you nothing," right? But I think the BRICS, they'll probably have a BRICS SDR, but it will be backed by gold and maybe some small basket of commodities as well.
The BRICS drawing rights or something like that.
Yeah.
just on a play on words, I could see them using that just to make fun of the West.
Or
If
they could use Keynes. Keynes wanted to have a world currency called Bancor, BANCOR. They could take the Mickey out of Keynes and use a Bancor.
See that, but the problem is that there's a Bancor project now based out of Israel that is a cryptocurrency type
Oh,
of that. So yeah, that'd be a yeah. But no, so real quick, let's touch on the fact that on top of the BRICS coming out with their basket for some type of world competitive currency, they also have the reliable alternative mechanisms for international settlements. So we got the anchor of the system will be whatever BRIC decide to put up there, but then on the interoperability retail level for international trade of goods and services, even talking about rerouting the BRICS nations amongst themselves, their trade to support one another during this transition. So the SPFF is Russia's version. Of course, China has the SIPs, and then everybody's got their own versions. So, like utilizing the blockchain, digital ledger technology type space, how do you think that things will play out on the retail side as far as I guess Chinese citizens having access to Russian citizens and Chinese and African being able to buy through like Alibaba and stuff like that? Will it be,
yeah. I think it's going to be like we do nowadays. When I buy something from Amazon, I use pounds with my debit card or MasterCard or whatever, and it will be the same. I don't think they're going to
converted? Yeah.
they're going to be using their own currency, but it will be a parallel system to the Western system, and I think they've got a good hang of it. They've had to adapt because of all the sanctions that the U.S. has been putting for years on countries like Russia and Iran, and now with the SWIFT situation, they've banned the Russian banks from SWIFT. And I think the Chinese have been developing their own payment system anyway, isn't it? SIPs
Yeah.
or something.
SIPs. Yeah.
So, but yeah, all you have to think about is like what we do nowadays in the West. They'll be able to do it there, but I don't think they're going to be using, the BRICS currency to buy things online. They're going to be using, the South African rand, the Brazilian real still. It'll just be for the BRICS reserve currency will be for nations to settle surpluses and deficits with each other.
Right. Now, to further the deterioration of our monetary structure. I think current pressures placed on Russia, and in reference to this whole historic debt default. Then I got another article to counter this, and of course, the narrative coming out of Russia is completely different than what this is. But it says Russia is days away from historic default as a 100 billion payment comes due, with Moscow cut off from the global financial system. Ooh, and so on the flip side of that, there's another article here, just real quick. Russia fulfills Euro bonds obligation using new mechanism that allows it to pay in rubles. So basically, Putin is saying, we'll pay you. We got everything we need to pay you in our own rubles. We'll let you do the conversion, but we're going to make good on our debts. It's in our own currency. But yet, the nations and the creditors may or may not be willing to accept this payment, or will they, will be the question. So, do you think this Western pushed and need for Russia to default will be more of an escalation to the deterioration of the banking crises and things of that nature if these bonds are not paid the way that they want, the West want to be paid, or what?
Yeah, I mean, Russia doesn't care about it because
Mm-hmm.
they have the money, but it's been stolen, and they've been like, uh, how can I say, blocked from using the Western system.
Yeah.
The people it's going to hurt are the creditors in the U.S. and Western Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and they could actually sue Western governments because they could argue, that Russia has the money to pay the bonds, but the West is not allowing it. So it could backfire completely in terms of the risk to stability. Yeah, it could hurt financial institutions. People might have to sell other assets because they're not getting
Mm-hmm.
paid
Mm-hmm.
their Russian bonds. I don't know how much in total it would be, but it could have a small impact. Who knows?
Yeah, and so the contagion would continue to spiral because all of these banks and all these globally systemic important banks are interconnected. So when one domino falls, it's unavoidable that it tips another one, and stuff we won't even hear about until. But then again, we know Russia and Europe are having major issues right now with the gas situation, and then we have the euro debt crises that's starting to implode, and also you factor in. I want to bring up this. Credit Suisse and what you mentioned earlier from a Wall Street Silver about the credit default swaps and how, based upon this, according to the way you're telling me, is that they're expecting Credit Suisse to go, I guess, belly up or what? What do you?
Yeah.
How could all this be like? Russia defaults and they don't get paid because I'm assuming Credit Suisse may have some interconnected to that Russian debt as well or something through that. So if they don't get paid, could this be a trigger point for Credit Suisse to go belly up type of thing or what?
Well, credit default swap is like an insurance against default.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you can see, it's the highest it's been in about 5 years, and it was as we're even higher than March 2020, as you can see here.
Yeah.
And it could spill over into the Russian situation, but I think this is a little separate. It's more to
Mm-hmm.
do with the whole too big to fail banks,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess maybe Credit Suisse is the new Deutsche Bank, But um, this is serious because the Credit Suisse is not in the eurozone because Switzerland is not part of the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
But all these banks in Europe and the US and the UK are interconnected.
Right.
So if Credit Suisse goes under, and it would be very serious.
Yeah, and so I was looking up just to see the size of Credit Suisse, and it was categorized as a globally systemic important banks. And so when one bank has issues, it automatically connects it with other banks. And so the idea of a bail-in. So I was talking earlier about Europe and the buying your situation and the non-performing loans and all the pig nations in particular have not been solved. They've gotten worse. And a part of the suggestion, according to some information I was reading, was the EU eventually having to deal with that. So they're talking about creating a bad bank, a bank just literally to take all that in. They would provide the funding to bring it all together. But then again, it's too big to contain because it's in every single country. And I was like, the only probability would probably be a bail-in at some point,
Yeah,
right?
bail-in is
So
in,
Cyprus was the door opener, and it's like,
indeed, yeah. The other thing they did in Cyprus was they um, they took customers' deposit above the 100,000 insurance,
mhm,
and then they gave them shares in the bank, which were
oh,
pretty much worthless. That was how they paid them.
yeah.
So
So like, okay, you got shares in a bank, and it's good to say since that time frame, the banks might have been. I mean, I think it was Likey Bank and a couple other banks I remember seeing because I was trying to follow it back then. But it's amazing how people don't really consider the fact that the debt contagion can spill out well beyond just a sovereign level down to the very depositor, and it could be a global event on
yeah,
top of whatever the cyber or whatever they're afraid of hitting as well. So yeah,
what
so
people forget is not just individuals that lose funds,
mhm,
but also businesses that have to keep a big float.
right.
They're not exempt either, so it affects the whole economy. And so a business that keeps €1 million to pay, its bills, its salaries and everything, they could be left with just 100,000, and they would go under.
Yeah. Now, even that with that 100,000 in this current environment, so this is, I'm assuming they haven't adjusted the insurance on deposit because they haven't done it here. I think it's still 250,000, but given the current inflationary pressures and cost of living, it's like okay, that 100,000 or 250,000 now is, it doesn't buy us nowhere near as what it did, 10 years ago, no less 20 years ago. So
Mm.
you're still gonna be shortchanged, but anyway, it's just more the contagion, us Billy. But let's get into just real quick. I want to share this little clip from Austria. So I saw today that it looks like Austria is going back towards some stimulus. So something was passed, I think yesterday, that each citizen will get 500 euros. I guess as you mentioned, to more currency to help fight inflation. And so it's just interesting how this is the first country that I'm aware of that starting up their stimulus or UBI, whatever it might be called. But that's just one, and I'm assuming there's more to follow. But uh,
California did that too, didn't they? Didn't they
they
pass?
got some certain experiments in different counties. So there's been more UBI testing going on throughout the U.S. And I want to say there's a whole coalition trying to really advocate for making it a state funded program nationwide, which a year or two from now, given current conditions, I could see that being the case. So, but it was already part of the plan. It's just they needed a reason to do it, and what better reason than was it 8.6 today? And let's talk a little bit about UK inflation figures, man. You say that so the 9.1 was your most recent, but you said
Yeah,
RPI. Give it a
yeah.
rundown on that.
CPI came out at 9.1, and then we have another measure called RPI, Retail Price Index,
Mm-hmm.
that came out at 11.7, and and that includes council tax, which is the local tax,
Mm-hmm.
and rents. So yeah, that the RPI was what was used prior to the UK adopting CPI in
Mm-hmm.
the late 90s. Yeah, and it's going to get worse, I think. Even with commodities going down, the price of oil going down. I saw yesterday, I drove out, that the price of diesel is almost £2, £2 per liter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, there's 4 gallons to the liter. I think, I'm not sure,
I think
4.2.
4.5, 4.4. I think.
So it's at an all-time high,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to end there. I think rising prices are here to stay because, and it's related to the BRICS. And you might think, why is it related to the BRICS? Well, because the BRICS, they've got loads of dollars and euros and some pounds, and
Mm-hmm.
they're scared of that getting confiscated. So they're going to sell as much as that as possible. What are
Yeah.
they going to do with that? Well, they're going to buy things, commodities, stockpile, They're going to buy gold, and that's going to make our currencies worth even less.
Yeah.
Our currency is coming home, and the supply of it is going to go through the roof. We're going to need a lot more of our own currencies to buy
Mm-hmm.
real things, commodities, while in the BRICS countries, they're probably going to be better off because their currencies are going to be relatively strong, I would say, against our currencies, and
Mm-hmm.
the and they're going to be buying the commodities as well.
Right. And that's the thing, like with the BRIC nations, as you mentioned, because they have everything needed, they can sustain themselves a lot longer. Like Putin made it clear a couple months ago that, we'll be able to weather the storm in the days ahead with no problem. And I'm like, well, the U.S. won't because they're giving away strategic oil, energy, and everything else. So, Chris, it says, appreciate you, man. It says, what will eventually cause the Fed to pivot? Thanks. And so I have my suspicions, Mario. Like I mentioned before, I don't, common sense would tell us they need to pivot, but knowing that they are part of the reset agenda, I can see them not following suit the way that they have in prior, tightening times. So my suspicion is I'm probably the only one that would be willing to be so bold or either stupid, but saying that the Fed may not pivot. They may let this thing crumble and point a finger, blame somebody else, and then an event happens, which allows them to use that even further to where it's going to distract people even more so while they'll continue to do some type of process. But to go back, man, the QE, I just find that hard to believe, but I could be wrong. Hope I am wrong. But, what are your thoughts about this pivoting?
We're already seeing, the financial markets, the bond market,
Mm-hmm.
saying that the Fed is going to stop raising rates in September. If you look at the interest rate futures market
Mm-hmm.
and also treasury yields, they've come off quite a bit in the last 2 weeks. The 10-year what's come down from like 3.5 to just over 3%. The 2-year as well is now like at 3.04. That had been up to almost 3.5 as well. So the other thing as well, I find it hard for the Fed to keep raising rates
Mm-hmm.
if we see GDP continue to contract.
Yeah.
We saw the PMI numbers yesterday; they were close to 50. They dropped very sharply. So yeah, I think that's what will. I don't know if they're going to pivot directly. They could just stop the tightening,
Mm-hmm.
wait, and then they pivot. Who knows?
Now, with the futures pricing in September, so basically, Q3 is when everybody's expecting them to pivot. So I see a lot of, I think Luke Groman and other people say, Q3 they pivoted. So I'm saying based upon prior uh, events where the Fed was expected to, according to what the futures were pricing in, the probability was order 90% that they end up responding accordingly, or what? What's the probability that it's still 50-50, but based upon the futures predicting that
Yeah,
they will.
and that could change, with the data coming forward in the next few weeks and months.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw some charts as well on Twitter that people are already expecting the Fed, to raise a couple of times, I guess, until September, and then cut again, like by next year. Um, your point about not the Fed not pivoting, the only problem with that is that the under the law, the Fed has a duty to keep full employment and also a stable prices, and they're not
Stable
keeping
prices.
stable
What?
prices.
What?
So if you get a recession,
Mm-hmm.
there won't be full employment. So they could be in trouble from Congress because Congress uh, is the institution that gave life to the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
But
But so even with those two mandates, full employment and price stability, they've already failed. Other than just using like just talking about in the grilling on Tuesday, Elizabeth Warren described precisely a hyper stagflationary event that I believe is occurring right now, and so basically Powell said, there's nothing really can do. We can't really. I mean, what can they do other than just talk and pretend as if like raising or hiking really matters at this point? You know what I'm saying? I think we're past the point of even.
the horses have, bolted and left the barn.
Right.
It's his fault that we have rising prices because, and and also his predecessors
Mm-hmm.
for keeping rates, because this is uh, uh, a result of all the inflation since '08,
Yeah.
really. So yeah, he's right that it's impossible because he was incompetent. But unfortunately, people in Congress, except for maybe a few like Rand Paul, don't know much about inflation and what they think it's rising prices. But I guess the only option Powell has, like you said, to stop it would be to crash the economy. Um,
Yeah. So like so he's quoted as mentioning about landing, like landing, like hard landing, landing, soft landing. So think about the narrative. We had transitory inflation, we had what other, little buzzwords they gave us, little two
yeah,
word
inflation
descriptions.
speaking as well. They were talking about that.
Yeah, so it's like, a landing now. It's like, okay, so your average person might be literally thinking, "Oh, the Fed can land it. They can land this." But even when you land it, then what do you do? Like, do you get out the plane? Like, so they're talking about the global monetary system, ultimately speaking, and they're talking about landing it. And it's like the best thing they could probably do is try to prolong the flight to keep the plane in the air. Never mind trying to land.
They
And
could land. They could land in the Everglades, and then they come out, and there's full of alligators there.
that, yeah, yeah, a landing. So literally, the idea of using a landing lets us know they're trying to bring this down. Now it's a matter of how. And I'm like, it's a crash and burn scenario. Like, buckle up. And it's like the casualties. Let's talk about the casualties from whatever happened, whether it's a landing, soft, hard, or crash. The monetary casualties would be those that I said are stuck in digital paper products, future promises to pay, of that. Like, those are the primary
Yeah,
casualties.
well, yeah, the average worker as well. Right now, we're seeing people going on strikes here in the UK because they can't
Mm,
afford to make a living. And someone I saw a comment, someone saying, "Oh, there's plenty of jobs. It's just people don't want to work." But why would you want to go to work if after all your costs of going to work and
mhm.
like uh, you've got no money left? You
Yeah.
might as well stay home with your parents or whoever and do nothing. And that's because the currency has been trashed.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what's happening. It's the collapse.
So with that, so that strikes. So like a part of I think the figures they're saying, there's for every job opening, there's two unavailable workers for every job opening out there. So basically, just saying that the people who were not returning to work and not even counting no more, all that has pretty much doubled. And so it's like, at this current moment, if people don't show up to work, that means businesses can't stay open, services can't be provided, goods can't be manufactured. So it's like an ever spiraling.
Yeah. The other problem that's happening is businesses, even if they have workers, their inputs are going up in price, so their costs are going up. They're having to pass that on to the consumer, and sometimes they can't, so they shut down.
Mhm.
So, like you said, you could have a hyperinflationary collapse where everything that you need to survive and live is really expensive, and your currency doesn't buy any of it, while all the paper investments completely go down the drain. You
Mhm.
can buy, you know, uh, cheap tech stocks, but no one has the money to buy it because
Right.
they're busy trying to buy food and pay for, fuel and other things.
Yeah. And a part of that, like, a lot of those companies that have been around for countless years will be out of business, and rebranding and the transition to this digital economy that they want is ever so obvious, to where robotics, automation, artificial reality, virtual reality, all that stuff is being built up right now as we speak, to be able to replace people. And then you got people coming out saying that you won't need to work because robots will do your job. And all the fast food got automation robots now, and that the sales have gone up tremendously for fast food to hire these robots, and so it's like wow, like
Yeah,
everything's playing out.
you won't need to get married. You can have a Japanese doll, right?
Oh my goodness. And on top of that, so let's just touch on one or two more stories, and then we'll open up for some thoughts, ideas, and questions. But the travel chaos. So here in the U.S., I think several thousand flights over this past Father Day weekend were canceled, and people stuck in airports. And Europe,
Yeah,
same way.
it seems to be concerted. And I was reading here in the UK, people are still, or in Germany, people weren't showing up to work because they tested positive for the beer, disease.
Yeah,
uh, I can't believe people are still testing for that now. It's ridiculous. And I think the other thing as well is you shut down the economy for, here in the UK, it was 240 days,
mm-hmm.
like not all at once, but the second lockdown and the first.
Yeah,
You disrupt the whole airline industry or the airports. It's going to be difficult bringing it back.
yeah,
And I think that's what they're finding. Or maybe it's also part of the agenda to discourage people from flying abroad or flying on holiday. Uh, of course, Klaus Schwab and his cohorts, they all have access to private jets, so they're
mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah, they'll be fine. And to move along further, man, this I might as well just share my 2 cents on this. So you brought this to my attention because I wasn't even aware of it, but it looks like with the overturning of Roe vs. Wade, ending 50 years of federal abortion rights. And so I have extremely mixed feelings on this because my question is, why now and for what? Like all of a sudden, like, the U.S., which is a very immoral, godless country, all of a sudden care about, the unborn. And so to me, this plays into laying the framework for the, not your body, not your choice, furthering that, that stuff that they
Yeah.
want to push around the world, to where they say that this opens the door for the government to somehow to say that they have the right to tell you what you can and can't do when it comes to, to participating in the future.
Well, yeah, the other thing I think it will do, and don't follow the US that closely, these kinds of topics, but
Mm-hmm.
it will divide people even more.
Mm.
This is a very divisive issue.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not good for a national harmony.
Right. It's definitely not going to unite us on because this is an important cause, but this whole topic is something that should never have gotten to this point. But it was a part of depopulation, destabilization, anyway. So, but it is what it is. But on another note, what makes it even more sickening is that last week the FDA approved the participation for the children, the unborn. So these are the last of the purebred of society. It happens to be in our children. And we got parents out here going to take their child to, participate. And it hurts my heart, man. But, for the same people who wear the mask today, the same people who will probably be out in the streets protesting for Roe vs. Wade to be the same people taking
They're okay with this, right?
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Not at all. But so let's open up for some questions, man. Feel free to throw out some thoughts, ideas, suggestions, questions, or whatever it might be, and we'll do our best to share our 2 cents on them. Highlight at Rethinking Dollar so to stand out and we can see it. And Mario, if you see anything, jump on it.
Yeah. Someone here says, "Faith parent, this place is sickening." I don't know if she's talking about our live stream or.
Well, we got what she say is what? It's skipping.
Sickening.
Oh, yeah.
But we got Rochelle Fernandez. Let's see what she's got.
Mike and Mario, chance you upon you guys live. What a blessing. How are my favorite YouTube doers? The test one is getting to increase jobs. Testing is just a way to increase jabs or jabs or jobs. I'm not sure. I assume it said jobs. And Roe vs. Wade matter is happening right with who mandate. Right. So yeah, good points there. What else we got there? So we did not touch on precious metals one bit today.
She meant California is disgusting.
California. Oh,
That's what it is. Um,
what else we got here? And just for the sake of, I didn't bother to even look at the metals, man. I saw silver's down a little bit. What else we got?
Michael Otto says, I was in the gym the other day and the guy was swimming with a mask on.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've seen some silliness myself. The worst is a person driving the car by themselves, window up, mask on.
I haven't seen any questions so far.
Yeah, me either. So here we go. Let me see here. Let's just touch on metals real quick, and then we'll dial back.
Yeah, let's see.
Let me see what the metal's talking about today.
Silver's actually made a low today of $20.60, but it's rebounded quite well. We're up 22 cents right now, 1% at 21.16. Gold is up $5 at 18.27. So they're holding, but the stock market is continuing to move higher. The Dow is up 2%, S&P 2.3, and the Nasdaq as well 2.3. I think we had some good economic numbers from the U.S. today, this afternoon, even though we had bad ones yesterday. New home sales apparently rose almost 700,000. They're expected to rise 588. And I saw headlines saying that Michigan inflation expectations dropped, so that was a positive. But it dropped from 5.4 to 5.3. I mean, that's still pretty bad. 5.3.
Yeah, going down is a positive.
Yeah, and Michigan consumer sentiment that dropped from 50.2 to 50. So I'm not sure what's going on there in the new home sales market, but these numbers, I guess, can be volatile.
Yeah. Here is RT 08 was because of 08 was 08 because of mortgage-backed securities failing. Now that they are basically doing the same thing, how bad will the crash be with stagflation? Whew. Oh man. A complete shakeup of the entire way of life. Like literally like unaffordability for things you need and the things you thought you own, you're gonna find out that they ain't worth much either. So it's like, the cost of surviving will go up, and everything that you thought was your net worth, whatever you use to accumulate your net worth with, will be going down. So it's like you'll basically own nothing, but still be required to sustain yourself, in a sense. Like house crash, portfolio crash. You don't have that wealth, the perceived wealth, but then again, the food and everything else to sustain your body is still rising, if not scarcity kicks in.
The only positive about what's happening is that you're going to actually have to be productive to earn a living. You won't be able to keep borrowing and spending.
No credit.
No credit. Yeah. No. The other thing as well, I think we're already there. I mean, you look at all these disruptions, strikes. We're already there. Some people say, I see comments a lot of times on my videos. Oh, I want to see the collapse. I'm waiting. Where is the collapse? I think we're in it. It's just that, the world outside is still the same and doesn't change. But
they haven't realized. The rest of the world hasn't realized yet. Like, the 99% of people who are literally still doing life and thinking that they're going back to normal. Like you can tell those people, the people getting tested still, the people who, wear the mask still, the people who.
And I think a lot of people, they think it's temporary because of Putin and Ukraine. They're blaming all that for all that's happening, and they think if that ends, everything will be all right. But
here's a last question we'll do. This says, what are some predictions you gentlemen miscalculated or got wrong that still has you baffled? I would say the first thing that comes to my mind is that the fact that the plane is still in the air and it hasn't crashed or been landed before now. Because I was under the impression that March 2020 was it would have been hard to revive the patient, but they injected it, gave it stimulus, and then Uncle Sam got up got off. He got up, he rose up for a minute. He's still on life support right now, but the fact that they've been able to prolong this thing so long without something severely breaking.
Yeah, I was working in the city in 08 in the financial sector, and I thought the whole thing was going to implode then, and it almost did, but it didn't. So The only reason it didn't is because they bailed everyone out with taxpayer money. You see, all the rising prices that we're seeing now, all the disruptions to the supply chain, it's all to do. It goes to '08
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't fix anything. Um, we still have a system that is highly financialized,
Mm-hmm.
based on credit, asset prices, inflation, deficit spending,
Yeah.
derivatives as well. That's very soon. They haven't reformed anything.
Right.
So, but they've kept that going, and yeah. So,
So here's the last question. The S400. It says RTD does a social credit system replace FICO one, and won't this create a sense of nationalism? Um, I think in the long run, somehow, some way, they will definitely find a way to use that new created score, social credit score, in place of the FICO score, just because FICO score is more so geared towards your credit and your ability to be able to borrow. But if credit is not readily available or used the way that it has been, you're going to need permission. So your social credit score is more permission based upon your participation in the society and cooperation with the state. So I could see that being the primary usage of some score that people use. So, but then that will be the ultimate form of the state literally runs and controls everything because you got to get permission. Everything's supposed to be permission based in the future, I think. What
I
you gonna
guess
say?
it's the Big Brother system, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
FICO score is just on your, just if you're a good or bad
Borrow,
credit.
yeah.
This is if you're a good or a good or a bad person to the state.
Yeah. If you're a good debtor or not. All right. Well, we are 46 minutes into it, as always.
Mario has become like the Grim Reaper. Michael.
No, man, just the goal is to be truthful. Like, we are, I think, two gentlemen of many that don't mind being truthful, even though truth hurts, it's painful, but it's necessary. I would not be the type of guy to get on here and just paint a rosy picture of like, oh, everything's fine. Go out and spend all you have, go take vacations, go shopping. No, prepare, brace for change. Look for opportunity amongst this change because, as you mentioned, we're going to get back to the point where you got to add value to somebody in order to survive. So focus on skills accumulation so you can use them when we need it. Because we go back to horse and buggy type of days, you're going to have to do something the world needs other than just, take selfies and swipe credit cards. That stuff is done, man. Anyway, I'm ranting. Let's let's end on a good note, Mario. If anything comes to mind, feel free to let us know or whatever however you want to end.
Rochelle says, that question about social credit score reminded me I still have to send you that carbon neutrality article I wrote. That's for you.
Bet. Good deal. And so Rochelle, she'll send me stuff and I'll pass it on. She's very knowledgeable and very in tune with things. So send that and I'll forward it to the community. Definitely appreciate that. So, as always, it's been great hanging out this Friday. Of course, we're approaching the end of June, heading to July. Summer's officially here. The BRICS are announcing some reserve currency. So it's my suspicion that before the end of this year, we may get another announcement of some kind, and we'll see what it's like. And if they announce a gold back or something or another, that could be the announcement that breaks the COMEX, or because the nations then at that point going to clamor to get as much as they can. Therefore, we could see some fireworks for real with metal prices before the end of the year. So who knows?
Or we could see a major war.
Yeah, or the lights could go out, cyber attack. So either one. So I'm sure they got a couple of different avenues covered. But be blessed, be safe, have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys later. Peace.